If you want to start a freelancing business, working on it while having a full-time job might seem like a good idea. But is it? And if you want to do so, what are the important considerations to keep in mind? In this video, I will show you exactly what you need to think about. So if you are working a full-time job and working on your freelancing business, you'll know the things that are important. If you want to take your freelancing business and eventually turn it into your full-time, you'll also know when is the right moment to make the change and what other things need to happen before you do so. Let's first speak about legal and tax implications. First of all, if you have any non-compete clauses, it's important to understand how these will affect you working on other stuff outside of your job. It's important that if you work on your freelancing business, it does not compete with your main job and the clients that you service. You don't want to get into any legal trouble, and it is important to be very clear and very deliberate with this from the first moment. The last thing you want to do is get into a legal battle that ends your dream of being a freelancer before it even starts. It's definitely not worth it. At the same time, I think it's also important to, if possible, discuss these things with your employer. You make it clear that it's not going to affect your regular working hours, that you will do this work in your evenings or weekends, and that anything that you do won't in any way, shape, or form tie in with your current employment. And being clear is very important. I think it's also a great point to keep in mind if you don't want to burn bridges after you leave your regular 9 to 5. It's also important to consider your tax implications, because once you go full-time as a freelancer, or even before, if you are making money outside of your regular job, you will have to consider how this affects your taxes, what things you need to do by yourself, for yourself, in order to stay legal and compliant. So it all depends on where you're from and where you operate. Checking with the people that understand this stuff in the place where you pay your taxes is a very important point. And one final point about this is that using common sense is important, both when it comes to dealing with your employer and also in terms of taxes. So it's better to be on the safer side, use common sense, than to have to go back and change stuff after you've taken specific actions. When you start your freelancing journey, it's important to understand whether there is demand for what you are about to offer. And what you are about to offer, or what you will offer, will change over time. But it's important that people actually want the products or services that you are offering. Generally, when you start, you're offering services. You're trading time for money, essentially. You're getting someone to pay you to create content, to create articles, videos, whatever it might be. Understanding that people are willing to pay for these services, and number two, what they are willing to pay for it, is very important. And the best way to do this is to look at what other people are doing. First, you choose a niche that you want to service. Let's say you're servicing business owners that have an online blog. You go to these business owners, you see what other people are offering them, and you see what these people are getting paid, and see if it makes sense for you. Also, if you can get in at the beginning of a trend where the demand is increasing, that would be a great time to get into and become the authority for that kind of service. If you know that AI is currently a topic that's trending, so if you can become the best person in your niche for AI-based work, that will give you the opportunity to demand higher rates than someone that offers similar services in an industry where there's a ton of people offering the same thing. This research can also help you identify any gaps in the market that are not being served, which is a great way for you to go in and provide products, services, etc. to help business owners solve that problem. The next best thing would be to take something that everyone else is offering, but adding your own twist to it. If you can offer eco-friendly web design, somehow you're able to have web servers that run on renewable, sustainable sources of energy. And you can find people that are passionate about that and combine the two as a service that you offer. You might find great success compared to someone that is offering just web design to business owners. So you can also incorporate two different things from two different areas to help you offer something that's more valuable. The next point, when you want to start working on a freelance business while also working a full-time job, is to have realistic expectations. As a person, I love setting the bar high and doing my best to reach that. And sometimes it ends up backfiring. And I don't mind that. It's something that I've always enjoyed, having that almost challenge to reach the goal I set. Setting big goals is good, but it's also important to set realistic goals along the way, or what might be considered milestones. With each milestone, having an action plan that you need to take in order to reach that specific milestone is also important. Because when you do so, you have the things that you can influence, the things that will make the difference between success or failure. Sometimes, as freelancers, I feel that we associate our happiness, our success, to things that are somewhat beyond our control. For example, whether a client says yes or no to working with you is something that you can influence, but not something that you can 100% control. At the same time, sending out X number of proposals, reaching out to people that might be interested in your services, doing so consistently over time is something that is fully within your control. Differentiating between the things you can control and things that you can't, and really focusing on the ones that you can, is how we should create goals. If not, you will be tying yourself to factors that are outside of your control. And I don't think that is a good idea at any stage of your business, and especially at the beginning. So when it comes to setting realistic goals, I would create a roadmap with the different milestones that will allow you to reach your goal. And then if you really want to go deeper, create action steps for each of those milestones. These could include how many proposals you send, what your marketing efforts will be about, how you will improve your specific skills within your freelancing business. These are all things that you have a direct impact on. The next point is networking and connections. These are super important when it comes to transitioning from having a full-time job to a freelancing job. The most obvious things that come to mind would be to use social media, attend networking events, and basically shake more hands. The more hands you shake, the more money you make. Most of the things you want in life can be gotten through knowing the right people. It's one thing I found in my freelancing business, and it's something that many people seem to understand over time. So getting out there, meeting people, making connections, and seeing how you can provide value to the other people is very important. But what does that look like in real life? And here are some ideas. Number one would be to join active groups that contain people that are on the same journey as you. If you're a freelance writer and want to have that as your full-time thing, join groups where freelance writers get together, share ideas, share your experience, share your success and failures, and you will start building a group of people that can get together to help each other. And I think having a network of such people is key. If there are local meetups, it's always better to meet someone in person, to shake their hand, to speak to them in a one-to-one situation. So any local meetups that you can get to, I would encourage you to go to. It's important to maintain your relationships and to never burn bridges. Just like I mentioned, not burning bridges with your previous employers, I think it's also important to not burn bridges with anyone you meet, even if you don't think that you have something of value to offer them, or vice versa at this moment, because you will never know when you will need an introduction made, or when someone needs the services that you can offer, and you get an introduction from someone else. So always build up relationships and seek to not destroy them. A good quote that I love to keep in mind here is to always dig your well before you are thirsty. If you start digging when you need water, chances are that you relate to that particular opportunity. So always think in advance. Do not just ask for things when you need them, but see how you can provide value to someone before you actually need anything in return. And another aspect that I think many potential freelancers don't really think about is time management and work-life balance. And for me personally, before I went full-time freelancing, I remember there were a lot of evenings with no sleep and a lot of weekends with no rest. And again, looking back, I was perfectly fine with that. There were times when it felt it was a lot, but I also realized that it was needed for the transition to happen. So I wouldn't necessarily change that to do anything differently. What I would do is have more structure to it. So I would plan beforehand. I would know the times I would spend working on my future business or my future freelancing writing career, and the time when I would rest, because I think that is also important. Also, a lot of tools can actually be beneficial. Tools like Asana, tools like Notion for productivity will allow you to keep things more structured, have things in more order. I think that is always a good thing. So in terms of do's and don'ts for the section, number 1, I do think you need to set clear boundaries between your full-time work and your freelancing work. I do think, number 2, that you need to take regular breaks to avoid burnout. And number 3, I do think you need to prioritize your tasks based on what is urgent and what is not. And as you get better at what you do, you will understand the things that really move the needle and the things that are just there to make you feel busy, but in reality are not really productive. At the same time, don't overcommit to projects that you know you can't deliver on. Secondly, don't forget you also have a personal life and that you need your time to recharge. And number 3, very important, is don't let your freelance work interfere with your full-time job and responsibilities. The last point I want to mention is how to know when to transition. And depending on who you speak to, they might give you different versions. The version I like the most and the one I use personally is I transitioned when things really got bad at my regular job. I knew that I wanted to make the change, and some factors that happened at the job really made the thing clear. I knew it was time for a change, so that was a big thing for me. Number 2 is when you have projects lined up and when you have an income that exceeds the money you're making from your regular job. I think that's a very good indication that the change is there to be made if you want to make it. So having projects and having an income that you can fall back onto, even if things don't work out. So having that amount of money, whatever it might be, saved up is a very important thing. You don't just want to get up and leave with nothing as a plan B. I think there's a time and place for burning the bridges, burning the boats, and just going straight in. But in this case, and also depending on the responsibilities you have in your life, I think you need to think a bit more long-term before making that step. So there you have it, the things that are important when transitioning from a regular 9-to-5 into a freelance career. These are the things that I found to be very important in my journey, and the things that I tell other people that are interested in making this same transition. What about you? What are the must-haves when it comes to making this transition? Do you agree with the points I mentioned? Let me know in the comments below, and I look forward to your feedback. In the meantime, check out the link in the description. It contains my checklist to get started as a freelance writer, and it will help you get up and running with your own business.